Okay guys, today I'll be showing you how I paint the slots in my slotted mags. Quick recap on what I did is I came in here in the black slots and I sanded all the black paint off with 320 grit sandpaper, and then on the face of the rim I sanded it with 1000 grit sandpaper, and then I went to 2000 grit sandpaper, and then I got a mother's Powerball and polished the face of the rim to a semi-gloss finish. If you have not seen the how to polish aluminum rims video, go check that out. I will leave a link in the description box below. Alright, so the next step is to wipe down the rim with some isopropyl alcohol, which is rubbing alcohol, and a microfiber towel. Once you have the rim cleaned, now the tape will properly adhere to the rim. So the next step is to mask off the rim. Here's how we will be taping these wheels up. So I use yellow masking tape because it's not too sticky to where it'll leave behind a great deal of residue, so cleanup is easier with yellow tape. Blue tape will also work. I use an X-Acto knife so that I can cut out the profiles of the slots in the mag rim. We are going to grab a piece of tape . Alright, now we're gonna lay it down right there. Make sure it's adhering properly and tight. We don't want any slack, and we want it around the edges real good. I'm gonna grab one more piece so that it'll cover the whole slot, and try to keep as little overlap on the tape as you can, because those spots with the overlap are harder to cut, and it's harder to get a cleaner cut that way. So you see how that is, where I got it nice and adhering around the edge so I can get a cleaner cut, and we got even coverage, little overlap. Alright, some other very important advice is, if I would like to trim this edge closer, do not cut the tape on the rim with an X-Acto knife or anything. Do not cut, because it will go through the tape and it will scratch the rim, because aluminum is very soft, and if you cut through the tape then it'll scratch the rim and you'll have to go back sanding and polishing it, and you do not want to do that. Alright guys, so here's another tip that I hope you'll find helpful. When you're using tape, instead of just ripping off a piece and you have like jagged edge and you're dealing with that edge curling over, this makes it a lot neater and easier if you just take your X-Acto knife and with hardly any pressure just drag it across the edge where you want to cut it. That way it'll keep the edge straight and you won't cut through the rest of the tape. Alright guys, so I just found something that I would like to show you. So I just finished cutting this slot, and if you can see, when you cut it, there's a little bit of flap. So you could come back in, like right here. Don't try to stay out of the camera's way. And just after you push it down, the edge, there will be a little bit of excess left over, and you just come in here with your X-Acto knife and you could trim up that excess, and that'll give you a cleaner edge for paint. That's some of the excess tape I got off, so it'll show you that you would get a cleaner cut if you come back in and trim it. Alright you guys, I finished taping and cutting the slots. So now what you'd want to do is tape off the surrounding areas, and I'm getting new tires, so I'm not worried about getting paint on the tires. But if you're saving your tires, here's a little trick, is to take some index cards, and if you slide it in between the rim and the tire, it creates a little barrier from getting paint on the rim. You just put a little bit of overlap on them, tuck them in between the rim and the tire, and you just do that around the whole rim. Index cards are pretty cheap, and it's easier way than taping, because tape also doesn't like to stick to the tire surface. So that's a little trick right there. So for me, I'm just going to tape the rest of the rim off. And another thing is, once you get done with your detailed taping, and you're just doing mass taping just to tape off a big area, you want to use newspaper, because you'll save more tape that way, and it's also less taping, so you save time as well. So I'll be putting a piece of newspaper right here, and I'll be trying to just put as much paper, but it's probably just going to end up me just taping around this rim. But we'll see what I can do. I cut a circle with out of a piece of newspaper, and I just cut little tiny strips of tape about that big, just tiny little strips, and just laid it around the edges so it's all sealed in, so I don't have to worry about taping in like intricate areas like that. The only intricate part I have to worry about is this. That's how using newspaper makes painting simpler. Alright, you guys, I'm going to show you how I prepare my newspaper strips for my masking. So I get this is a clipboard, and it's not wooden. You don't want anything that'll stick to your tape. So this is just a plastic clipboard. So I'll just spray it down with some isopropyl alcohol and wipe it so there's no dust that'll get picked up by the tape, so the tape remains sticky. Alright, so now I will get a strip of newspaper. I cut these earlier. I just got some newspaper and cut them into strips like this. The reason for this thickness is because you don't have to bend it, it won't crinkle, and it'll be neater. Everything with masking is about neatness. This is where the plastic clipboard comes in handy. So just cut a piece of tape up, and this way I don't have to hold it up in the air and try to put the tape on. I can just place it on the tape, on the newspaper, on the clipboard, and I have my strip. I just peel it off the tape. It's still nice and sticky, and it's ready to go on the rim. I'm back over here with the rim, and I'm going to show you how I put these strips of newspaper on. So I have my half overlap tape edge, so I'm just going to bring it down to where I want it to and lay that on there. Get it nice and stuck on there, and you can see how the tape overflaps on the tire. And on the back here, I will get another piece of tape and just tack it down to the tire so it doesn't flap around. Just like so. Here, I'll put it right here. And then I'll cut off the excess. There we go. So I got 4 strips of newspaper on here, and as you can see, I got good overlap coverage going on it, and my main point was just to cover the edge of the rim so I don't get paint on the edge of the rim, but I could care less about the tire. I showed you the trick if you're trying to save your tire, but you'll be doing something completely different from what I'm doing if that's the case. So for me, this will work. It covers the rim, there's no gaps, good overlap, everything's alright. Alright guys, I got my taping done. As you can see, I got everything covered around the edge of the rim. The paper's not doing anything weird. So I got little strips of tape, and just in the crevices, just to be extra positive, I just put a piece of tape on each crease in the newspaper, and you can see that the only thing showing is these slots that I need to paint. And I also got the back side covered as well. Here's the back side. I did a similar thing with what I did on the front side, where I just put the tape around the rim, and since I'm painting in this area as well, all I need to do is cover that up, and same thing with the tire and the rim. I just laid some of these strips down to just hold the paper down because it kept flapping up with the wind. And the hub I taped off. I just put a bunch of strips of tape on it and then just cut around the rim. And I'm just going to paint in here and it should keep everything off of the rim. It's time for painting. I'm not going to show you me painting, but I will give you a brief example of it so you know what I do. I don't want to have the camera out while I have spray. I don't want to get overspray on the camera, so I'll just show you guys. I'll do a dry run of what I'm going to do. This is the paint I am using. It's Duplicolor wheel paint, and this paint is resistant to the acidity of brake dust, and it's more resistant to rock chips than regular paint is. So it's specifically designed for wheels. So the proper way of painting would be to put a filler primer or just any primer on first, and there's a few reasons why I'm not using a primer. If you were to be painting the whole wheel, it would probably be a good idea to use a primer, because then it'll fill in some of the scratches and stuff and you'll get a better job overall. The reason I'm not using a primer mostly is because I'm just painting the slots and it's not that big of a part of the rim. And you could also use primer for rust prevention. It gives the paint a better surface to stick to. But I'm not using it because I don't really need it. But if you're doing a full-on painting the whole surface of the rim, I would use primer. If you are using a different paint, instructions may vary upon amount of coats, time between coats. If you're using the same paint, this is 10 minutes in between coats. It says 3 light coats and 1 medium coat. I normally just do it to when I like the way it looks. If you've never painted before and you're planning on this being your first project, I would recommend painting little things before you do a wheel, and watch a few YouTube videos that are specific to how to spray paint, and because this is just going to be pretty much a crash course on how I do it. I'm not going to go into too much detail, so I would watch a video about spray painting before you start spray painting and get some practice on some littler parts before that. So the first step is to prep your surface, which we've already been doing in an earlier video, which I linked in the description box below. I had sanded it originally with 500 grit sandpaper, and this can says 600 grit sandpaper. So, and I went back and sanded it with 320. But whatever grit you sand with, just make sure that it's consistent and smooth, and it should be fine. So now I'm going to bring you over to the rim and show you how I spray paint. Alright, so painting the face of the rim is going to be a lot easier than trying to get into spots like this, and all rims have slots in them, so this will be helpful if you do paint the whole rim. You're still going to need to get in these slots. So I like to take it one side at a time. So first I'm going to focus on these parts, and you get your can shaken up to where the ball moves freely in there. And I'd like to just do spray, and you start off the part and end off the part. That's a big thing. So I like to spray, light coat just to introduce the paint to the part. And I do that around the whole rim, and then I'll focus on this part right here, and I'll do that for the whole rim, just walking around, making sure I get a good even coat, light coat to start off, and then I'll do this one, and then I'll come over here, and I'll spray on that one, and I'll do that. So then I get all 4 sides covered, and that's just the first coat's a light coat, so that just to introduce the paint to the part. You don't want to cake it on, because then it'll run, and your paint job will look bad. So once you have that first coat, the following coats can be a little bit thicker, but you still want to keep them to where they won't run. If you do have a run, it's not the end of the world. Just get some fine grit sandpaper and sand it down to flat again, and then you can spray over it and it'll be fine. But you just want to try and keep from getting runs, and it's the same procedure for the rest of the coats, just a little bit thicker, not to run, but that's why you need to practice, so that you know how thick you can get it without it running. If you've never spray painted before, again, I recommend watching a video on spray painting. This is just a crash course to show you how I do it on my wheel for the people who already know how to spray paint. So if you don't know how to spray paint, check out another video. I'll spray paint this, and I will be back once I'm done. I finished painting the rim, and I removed the tape, and I wiped it down with some isopropyl alcohol after a day, so to get off the residue from the tape off, and it looks pretty good. And well, at least I think it looks pretty good. Pretty good and even. I'll come in here and clean up some of the edges with an X-Acto knife, and I did the back side too. Let me show you that. Just a good coat right in there. So yeah, that's what that is. So my next step is to put some pinstripe on this. If you'd like to see that video, I will leave a link in the description box below. I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, please leave a like. If you're not already, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.